Hello, everybody. So my wish got granted. MSTR strategy is so back. They used the ATM a lot this past week, and I was so pleased to see that. What did we get? We got a $357 million buy. A buy that was seven times bigger than what we had last week. 7 times bigger than what we had last week. All thanks to the Common ATM. Before I go and I comment on the ATM, I want to just talk about the fact that MSTR seems fixed. As you can see, and I'm using the IBIT ETF. I'm using the ETF because of the same market hours as strategy, so it makes comparison much easier. As you can see, as I record this, Bitcoin is down more than 4%. Strategy is down minus 3%. So strategy is actually outperforming Bitcoin on a day like this. Normally strategy, we would expect to see a minus 6%. You don't. So this tells me that the market is very excited about the ATM coming back. And the ATM coming back likely means that the mNAV will re-rate because that mNAV was high because, MSTR was tapping it. MSTR was actually using it to generate a Bitcoin yield. From the moment there was no Bitcoin yield generated via the price to NAV mechanism, there was no reason for a price to NAV to stay up. I think that could be partially the reason. And of course, the other big reason being the preferreds are not ready for prime time. The preferred will be a 26 or 27 story, but the preferred are not yet a 2025 story. Also, let's remember that Bitcoin coming out of a weekend, Bitcoin lives in a more manipulated world than TradFi on the weekends, coming out of the weekend. But I would argue that as soon as the US markets open and we get a few trading days in, it is tough to manipulate the flows of America's financial markets, which are the most developed ones, right? But on the weekend, America's financial markets are turned off, and so you get a lot of shenanigans happening overseas, and this is why we see these crazy moves. I think Bitcoin should be much higher than 112 right now. The price action over the weekend, frankly, I'm beginning to see it more and more as meaningless, and maybe we should take Bitcoin's price on Wednesdays and average it every week on Wednesdays and look at that as kind of more of a reference price, because the weekend price of Bitcoin just cannot be trusted. At least that is my view, and it seems to have been a pattern for months now. Anyways, we celebrate today. Look at the ATM. The ATM, 310 million in net proceeds for the ATM, and this was issued roughly at a mNAV of 1.6. The mNAV is rebounding. So 1.6, what does that mean? That means about 35% of that was yield. Like, this is more than 100 million yield, right? Because you were selling $1 for $1.60. Selling $1 for $1.60 or selling $1 for $1.58, your margin is more than 33%. It's probably 35, 36-ish% margin on selling the MSTR Common. That is an excellent margin. Just like everybody else, I would like to see a 66, 70% margin if we had like a 3x mNAV or a 2.8 or 2.7x mNAV, but we don't have it. So I'm fine with 30% margin on selling MSTR. MSTR is the product. It's the product. Tesla sells cars. Strategy sells MSTR Common. And Strategy sold 875,000 units of its most successful product, the MSTR Common. And that is why it was able to generate a yield. The yield between last week and this week, the yield moved from 25.1 to 25.4. So this little experiment to stop the Common ATM, little experiment driven by perhaps a loud minority on Wall Street, perhaps a loud minority on X. This loud minority has cost us nearly 1% worth of yield. Nearly 1%. Like that. Like, let's realize that 25.1 to 25.4. So that's 0.3, and we've been through this, no ATM madness for like 3 weeks. So we're at nearly a percent of BTC yield is what it has cost us. Now, fast forward to 2035 and think about how much this experiment has cost us. Yeah, and you remember my video, my first video when he stopped the ATM. I was like, okay, I trust Saylor and I trust his AIs, but I don't like it as much. I'm not too fond, but I trust him. And of course, my trust was rewarded because he reverted back and he went back to the ATM. Yes, it makes sense to sell units of your most successful product for a 35 or a 33% margin. It makes a lot of sense to do that. You can see for the Strike and the Stripe ATM, it essentially did a test run, not much, but you can see, the Stride ATM, for example, which is trading at a steep discount, was barely sold. There's no point of selling that one because you're essentially losing money relative to par. Of course, it doesn't make a really difference because perpetual debt, so you may not have to pay it off ever, and you don't. It's not you may, you don't. But still, like I like to see him issue debt at a high price to par. So when he issued Strife, for example, you can see, $26 million worth of Strife being issued. He issued it at 110. And it's $100 par, so you're making 10. So you're selling 100 for 110. Price to par is 1.1. You're making money. That's why the proceeds are 26, almost 27 million, and the notional value, the quote unquote debt, is 23 million. So you're making $10 for every 100. That makes a lot of sense to tap that Strife ATM. For the Strike ATM, doesn't make as much sense because you're kind of technically losing 5 compared to the 100. But on average, I would like to see on average the issuance of the preferred be done at a positive price to par. That's a nice icing on the cake. But the ATM saved the day. The yield is back. My guess is that the price to NAV will re-rate, and we need to continue that race because, of course, our goal for the year is a 30% Bitcoin yield for the year. So you can see we're at 25.4. I think we're still in play for having updated BTC yield guidance in Q3 once again, for him to do a beat and raise on guidance in Q3. I think we're still in play, but we're gonna cut it short. I mean, it's gonna be tougher because we wasted 3 weeks of not doing the common ATM. At the end of the day, what matters is us being able to generate that 25 to 30% Bitcoin yield each year. Because if you do say 25 to say 27%, you do 27% Bitcoin yield for 3 years, you double the Bitcoin bag, you double the Bitcoin stack. And if the ATM is the tool to be used, then the ATM is the tool to be used. Conclusion: the mNAV is rebounding. I haven't seen the mNAV at these levels. If I track the mNAV here and there, depending on the thing, I clearly see a trend in the mNAV slightly rebounding I think after today's big buy and after the delta we have between Bitcoin's price and strategy price, the mNAV will continue rebounding. The main black hole, the MSTR units, the MSTR common stock, the main black hole in the equity market, in this blue area right here, in this more forward-looking part of the market, more understanding of Bitcoin part of the market. I think that machine, that revenue machine, it's not revenue, but you know what I mean, that fundraising machine is back. And it's working, and it has always worked, and it is still working. And all you have to fight is the third of people not understanding that dilution is good, and that's okay. We're well on our way. So anyways, this was not financial advice, not investment advice. This is only entertainment. I'm hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe. Follow me on X, follow me on Patreon. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.